So, I wanted to start this discussion by sharing with you three things that will always differentiate you from AI, no matter how sophisticated it gets or what masks or disguises it wears. So, first of all, it is never going to care about what it does with its life. It is never going to have existential angst over whether or not it is living authentically or in alignment with its life purpose and its soul. And it is not going to seek out therapy to help it heal from the demands of modern collective life, which aren't set up to recognize consciousness or the health and well being of our psyche. So it will never truly care about these things, like no matter how it's programmed or what it's programmed to mimic. It can't because it will never be something that inherits the properties of consciousness. Why? Because consciousness is not an emergent property. Consciousness is fundamental. At best, we might come to think about general forms of AI as like types of representations of consciousness or aspects of consciousness in the same way that we do right now with, for example, 19th century French painting, which is a very good representation of many aspects of visual perception, but it's not the same thing. You get the point? So, all of this, though, of course, is just a related sidebar to our topic, and you'll see why. Just keep it in mind because it is important, and I do want to come back to it. It's part of the larger context of everything that I'm talking about right now and kind of like building into that larger conversation. But the point here is this larger point is that one of the most essential things about being human is our constant search for meaning in life, whether or not we arrive at conclusions of meaninglessness or whether we end up compulsively using distractions that keep us from really having to face or answer that question for ourselves. And again, the point here is to understand that it's because human life is rooted in consciousness that we end up going on this search in the first place, because life as a form of consciousness inherits its properties, to put it in like operationalist language like that. But we inherit the intrinsic aspects and qualities of meaning and the search for meaning, which are already present in consciousness. And so, but what we usually end up doing from a human perspective is we pose this to ourselves as a question about our life's purpose. So, what is the meaning of life is like the general form of the more specific question: what should I do with my life? What is my life purpose? And we can say this about each individual life and even each individual species, to see these as really like one answer, individual answers to this question that consciousness can explore in order to explore like certain perspectives and vantage points and grow in its own understanding. So, this is why the meaning of life is what you do with your consciousness while you're here. And so, this is where today's video begins as a follow-up to the one I made about 2 weeks ago. So if you haven't seen that yet, you can, go back, make sure you watch that. You don't have to watch it first, but it's sort of the part one, and this will be the part two of the same topic. And this video is also a follow-up to last week's video on life purpose, where I talked about how what is really needed is to make sure that you haven't cut yourself off from the flow of source consciousness. And so this is why, because it's the reason that the meaning of life will be what you do with your consciousness while you're here. So it's because consciousness is the intrinsic search for meaning or for an exploration of knowledge about itself. And because it engages in a search, this is why it can experience both meaning and meaninglessness. Like, by definition, if you're searching for meaning, you don't yet have it. You don't yet have the aspect that you're looking for. Yet, in a paradoxical way, you already almost understand it. So, So paradoxically, the search for meaning is itself meaningful. And true meaninglessness would be the cessation of that search entirely, or the experience basically of cutting yourself off from the flow of consciousness. If that's what consciousness wants to do, is embark on this search, and then you cut yourself off from that, by definition, now you've entered into this state of meaninglessness. And what do we call that? That's habit, or that's automation. All of these are aspects of unconsciousness. So if something's automated, by definition, it's not conscious, point blank. Okay, so let's move on to the more practical side of this question again. I had some really good questions come up from part one of this video. Someone mentioned like they're recently retired and now they're looking for like how they should be spending their time and their energy. And someone else was talking about how to find purposeful, aligned work. So the common root of all of these types of questions is always to follow what will like bring you back into a feeling of alignment. And this is a much deeper idea than, for example, just self-care or something. This is about doing what reconnects you with your soul or your experience of your highest self, your highest set of values, your highest vision for how you could be living out your life. We already have a natural relationship to that, so you don't have to dig too deep. It does require a certain energy for being able to imagine it. So depending on what type of situation you're in right now, you may not be able to actually like do the work of imagination to get there. Um, but otherwise, like we do have a natural relationship to that. And so you want to get back to like what your soul wants, what your psyche wants. And to do this means you've at least begun the process of remembering like who you are on a deeper level than just whatever the set of your current 3D circumstances are. So instead of asking, what should I do with my life? Try asking something more like, what do I want to do now? Because life is now. And see how the first question is already kind of taking like a third person vantage point. It's almost as if like you're living your life for someone else or you're living your life for some other reason. But we're actually not here for our obituaries, for example. Like we're not living our lives for our obituaries. So just think about, like, it's kind of strange to think about how much of what's most meaningful is actually like left out of those anyway. And then if you think about like professional biographers who spend their lives studying certain artists and musicians, you know, even the stories they end up telling in like full-length manuscripts are just, you know, will still just be from these like limited human perspectives and narratives that basically regurgitate the 3D social matrix. They don't have any access really to like the first person continuity of consciousness, which was developed in this lifetime. So for your own case, like ask yourself what you would like to be doing right now or this week. Or, you know, if you're feeling really lost, like that's where I would start. The point is not to start with like really huge concepts. Like don't try to think through large categories like your passion and your purpose. More specifically, think about, get down to this more granular level. You'll have more success with it. I would ask yourself, what is it that naturally holds my attention? So what does your attention really like? For example, what or when does it not feel bored with anything? When do you naturally dig deeper? When are you not looking for distractions? And especially like on what activities or places and situations does it naturally seem to give you back energy? Actually, like it opens up the tap on universal energy and you have this more of an experience of flow, for example. Now, a second approach to this reformulated question, for example, how am I cultivating my consciousness while I'm here, is just to look at like what you're already doing. And so this would be to look objectively at the decisions that you do make and where you already do place your attention and your energy, and ask what it is that you're really in service to. Like, what is governing your life? So, for example, the Jungian analyst James Hollis has said that we're always in service to something or someone. So, is it someone else or is it an institution? What values are you really in service to? Are these your own values or are they adopted values? Are you in service to your soul? Do you even know what you want on that level? So you have to know what the things are that you care most about right now, and you need to like pursue them or activate them or engage them and then move along that path. And some have called this like your desire path or your desiring path. Like you follow that thread of desire, and as you do, and as you progress along that, it refines your understanding. It will bring in new information for you. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be doing the same thing for the rest of your life. It may be a station you need to hold for a good year, doing it really intensely. It depends on what you learn and how you grow in that time. So, but it's about knowing and following and pursuing these specific values. So you need to know like your highest values, your core values, and activate along those paths. And it basically just comes down to, again, it's just being active in the stream of consciousness, active in that flow that you can open up once you make that connection. And yeah, the whole point is to really just like bring that level of awareness down into the 3D body and into this 3D life. So there's a deep link between the experience of meaning and the experience of energy. And I think this also speaks to the fundamental nature of consciousness, because it's not limited by the same biological constraints as, for example, on our perceptual systems, which depend on the same finite 3D rules of energy that also tell us when we're exhausted, or that give us hard rules for our neurons, telling us there's a specific window in which our neurons can fire and then start up again and fire again. The sodium and the potassium levels inside and out the cell have to like match, or like they have specific levels they have to meet. So let's just go back for another quote by James Hollis here, for example, on this point. He says that if what you're doing is truly meaningful for you from the perspective of your soul, it's naturally going to carry you through difficult times. It's going to give you energy. Whereas if something's not actually meaningful from the perspective of what your soul wants, then even if you try to force it, it's going to drive you into like burnout and depression and worse. So basically, when you're doing what's right for you, the energy is there to meet you, and you will gain more energy from it. So this is the fourth tip I would give, which is basically to, if you're trying to think about your life, just do this in terms of following your own energy. Learn to follow where your own energy naturally wants to go. Track it, like study it over time, pay attention to what actually energizes you. And yeah, it's just go into, for example, the places where you palpably feel like new rushes of nourishing energy. If you talk to someone who is an environmental empath, as I am, we're very sensitive to the energy of locations. And it's almost like I can get an auric read right away on a new place that I visit. And the point here is that this is also information that can tell you something about your purpose. It will give you hints, for example, like you need to move away from a certain area or towards into a new part of the country or a certain part of the world. And so my last suggestion for you here would be to really builds on the last one, but it's to really specifically watch for and follow where your own natural sensitivities are. Like if you're highly sensitive towards the treatment of animals, or you're highly sensitive to the ways that people talk to each other, for example. What are you naturally highly empathic towards? And this is going to be another clue. It's it's giving you some insight on what you're meant to do, what you're meant to engage with, or it might be just directing you to a specific group or specific people that you're meant to meet if you act on these sensitivities. So, and these again might represent skills that you gained in another life, or you're just really meant to develop these skills specifically in this lifetime. So again, yeah, you might feel highly sensitive to like how people are using technology or how we are treating nature. So just pay attention to that and just really dig into that and use that as your initial roadmap. And so the idea here is just to like get going, just get pursuing those desiring paths, get started on your roadmap, and then you will gain information from there. But you don't want to wait. You don't want to like wait on what you already know. You don't want to wait on gifts that you already know you have, because again, it's that saying from the Gospel of Thomas, I think, like what you don't bring forth that is already inside you is actually going to destroy you, and it can make you sick. As Hollis said, it will lead you into depression, burnout, something else. And then if you're sick enough, then all of a sudden that's your purpose, because now your purpose is like you have to heal from this autoimmune disease or anything similar. And these aren't the only reasons somebody can get sick. I'm not saying that, but there is a demonstrated pathway from, again, like not bringing forth what's already inside you. Like you've already been given gifts, literally. So I hope that gives you a little bit more insight on this topic. Let me know like any specific questions it raises. And like if any of these tips are helpful, like just let me know where you guys are at in the process. And I really look forward to hearing from you in the comments, and we'll keep talking about this, okay? Thanks for watching. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel, and please check out some of my earlier videos if there's some that you still haven't watched. It would just really help the channel to, watch more of my videos and just really help the channel get a footing. And then I'm going to keep going and build from there. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you in the comments.